A Mexican drug cartel murders a family in Nye. ABC is exposed over Jeffrey Epstein, and we take a look at Tuesday's election results. My name is Sean Clinton, and this is the God and Freedom Show. It's apparent to me that the news is basically like a flowing river with a very strong current, and every week you have to walk right through the river to get to the other side, which is the weekend. And then, but basically you're like basically struggling just to get past all this news constantly coming and coming and coming, and every once in a while you see a big log that trips you over, knocks you in the water, and that would be basically an image of a big story or whatever. And that's pretty much how the news cycle is, and this week's just been garbage for the most part in terms of the news cycle, but that's pretty much every week at this point. But we do have a lot to get to today. But first, before we get to the news, I do have a little kind of pitch I want to bring out because, as we all know, Veterans Day is coming up Monday, and one of the biggest problems in this country is that veterans in this country are not well taken care of for the most part. Like, they go fight battle, come home, and then you kind of just left to fend for themselves pretty much. And the thing is, a lot of these soldiers are wounded or have PTSD and all that. So, but this is when we as a country need to come and help them out. And so, some sites I do recommend kind of help out, do get some donations, whatever, is the Wounded Warrior Project. These guys are awesome. They do all sorts of work with wounded warriors, not just people who are physically wounded, but are mentally wounded, who have PTSD or whatever. And so yeah, they do a lot of great work. So I do highly recommend you guys starting to donate. Start donate to them and all that. So, and I recently started donating to them, do another kind of a monthly payment, whatever. So you can do that, or you can do a one-time gift or whatever. But of course, there's plenty of other sites you can go to kind of donate, whatever. But definitely take a look at these sites because the fact is our government has done a terrible job to take care of veterans. But that's where we, as private citizens, need to come in and help them out ourselves. Alrighty, guys. So let's get started with the news today. So we have, so up first is on Monday there was a horrible tragedy. Basically, a Mexican drug cartel came in and murdered a family of 9, all the women and children. So it basically happened, this family of 9 who were Americans from Utah, I believe, were traveling to, I'm guessing, California from the looks of it, and then they had to go through kind of the northern part of Mexico to get to wherever they're going. But then along the way, a Mexican drug cartel came in, ambushed them, and killed all of them. It's a very tragic story, very tragic. And the fact that it was all women and children too is just makes it all the worse. But that's the thing with this region right here. This particular part, drug cartels are very prominent in this region, and they're very violent. They're not good people at all. They murder many people, including their own people, and of course they murder American citizens. So yeah, they're a garbage group of people, and so yeah, then they really Mexico really needs to really start taking care of these guys because they're killing most of the time they're killing their own people. Excuse me. But the problem is the only person who only side who's willing to do anything is the American side, And my Mexico doesn't seem at all interested in doing that. So, anyways, so President Trump tweeted out the other day. This is the excuse me. This is the time for Mexico, with the help of the United States, to wage war on the drug cartels and wipe them off the face of the earth. We merely await a call from our great new president. He's talking about the new Mexican president who was recently elected there. So, and they have actually had some really good kind of talks and conversations and all that. So there could be some good stuff that comes out of that. I hope so. Because, yeah, like I said, like drug cartels are just need. I mean, they have no place in North America at all. They just had no place. Okay, but here's the thing, though. You would think everybody would be on the same side of this, right? You would think like everybody would come in like and try to see, okay, like this family was brutally murdered for no reason whatsoever, and that we need to put our best efforts to stop these drug cartels all over the border. But of course, that's not how we operate now. So we have the media, of course, since President Trump took the side of going after the drug cartels, they had to basically take the side of protecting the drug cartel. And in doing that, here's what's been doing that. They basically have been smearing the family that was murdered. So here's like one story right here. It's from the LA Times. From the LA Times, and here is what it's titled: "Massacre of U.S. Citizens Puts Spotlight on Mormon Community with Deep Roots in Mexico." The roadside killings of 9 U.S. citizens in the northern Mexico has brought renewed attention to the scattered communities of Mormons who settled in the country more than a century ago to escape persecution. The 3 women and 14 children whom assailants ambushed Monday as they drove toward Arizona from the town of Bafispe in Sonora State, including descendants of a fundamentalist Mormon community that has lived in the country for decades. So yeah, what I said earlier about them coming from Utah or whatever, that's basically wrong. They're actually coming from northern part of Mexico to go into Arizona. So, but anyways, early Wednesday, criminal investigators in northern Mexico said a suspect had been arrested and was under investigation for possible connections with the deaths. A Mexican official had earlier said the killers might have mistaken the family for members of a rival drug cartel. Some of the victims shared the last name LeBron, or one, I don't know how to pronounce it, but anyways, they were related to a prominent fundamentalist Mormon family who, by the same name, said Daniel LeBron, a cousin of one of the victims, Ronita Miriam Miller. Daniel LeBron lives in Colina LeBron in Chihuahua, goodness gracious, a community established by fundamentalist Mormons in 1924 that has close ties to the LeBrons of Bafispe. The LeBrons are among a handful of major groups of fundamentalists, said Patrick Mason, a historian of Mormonism at Utah State University. But he added, LeBron name in recent decades has often been linked to violence. Unfortunately, this incident only adds to that association. Okay, so basically what they're saying is, this family that might be related to a family of Mormons, the called the O'Briens, who had in the past had like links to violence, whatever. Because of that, I mean that basically they were, I mean, they had it coming. Basically, they're like being killed by drug cartels. They had it coming because they might have had links to violence, whatever. That like, what in the world? Like, why is this relevant? Like, what was the point in going like through the past and trying to smear this entire family who was just murdered? Like, seriously, we should all be on the same side of this. Like, why in the world? Like, why in the world are we trying to smear the victims in this scenario? But it does go to a deeper point, which we'll get to a little bit. But I mean, this wasn't the only piece like this. There were several other pieces like this. I mean, and all of them pretty much were attacking the fact they were all Mormons, whatever. Now, here's the thing. I'm not a fan of Mormonism at all. I'm not a fan at all. But I mean, that doesn't mean they deserve to be murdered or whatever. So, I mean, again, I just don't understand what the point of all this is. I just don't. But anyways, ABC News has basically a similar headline here, and here's what it says: What to know about the Mormon community in Mexico following ambush attack. And it pretty much goes to the same thing. Goes to that family history, that they're part of the Church of Latter-day Saints, whatever. Just like, why is this relevant? I'm just boggled that this is somehow relevant to the situation. But this is all part of one big broad point, is that the media basically wants to find any excuse whatsoever to advocate for open borders. And because I mean, they want open borders specifically because Trump wants secure border. I mean, let's be real about this. I mean, in the past, media and the left were all for securing the border, whatever. But then over the years, as Republicans become more for securing the border, Democrats moved further to the left, saying they want more open borders. And then Trump recently, of course, when he was elected, was a big advocate for like building a wall and securing the border, and that caused the left to pretty much embrace full-on open borders. And that means, drug cartels run free, so be it. As long as they cater to their base, whatever. And I mean, that just tells you the nature of the left today. Like, they're willing to just like brush off killings like this in order to like not offend people, basically. And here's the thing: when you advocate for open borders, there is a group of people that you are offending. That is the people who came in here legally. Like, the people who came here legally, like, have to go through all sorts of kind of the entire process to get in the country, get a visa, and like work the way to get a citizenship here in America. And they props them too. Like, if willing, like, that tells you like how desperate they really want to get in and to go through all that work. And by the way, like, even people who do come here illegally, most of them are family members, like families and all that, trying to escape bad situations. But the thing is, that doesn't mean we have an obligation to take them all in, like, without vetting them. They need everybody who comes in, whether it comes from the northern border, southern border, from the ocean borders, whatever. Everybody that comes in the country who's not a citizen needs to be vetted somehow. Because here's the thing: there is still a problem with terrorism in the world. And most terrorists despise America, and they want to do harm to this country. So they'll find any way possible to get in. But back to my original point, and the people who come here legally, that they are offended by the fact that the left wants to create this kind of loophole for people to come in illegally without any vetting whatsoever, and that cannot happen in this country. Again, I have nothing but sympathy for them, for people who want to come here, because the fact they want to come here tells you how great this country is. That tells you, like, they see America as this great opportunity to be free and to live their lives how they want. But at the same time, we are a sovereign nation. We are a sovereign nation of borders, and we do have laws that need to be followed. So yeah, I mean, it's all a messed up situation right here, and it just goes into play just how garbage the media is. Like, they're just, I hate the term. I don't like to label the entire media fake news, but I'm getting, well, never that. Sorry, but yeah, I don't really like labeling the entire media fake news or the enemy of people or whatever. But I mean, every day when I see a headline to a headline, just with lies and basic smears or whatever, it's hard not to come to that conclusion. It really is. So yeah, like I said, here's like one example that came out yesterday about just how garbage the media is. If I can get it pulled up. Come on. So it's from the Washington Post. It's an opinion piece, and it's headlined like this. And this headline is so dumb and stupid. I can't believe it's coming from the Washington Post. It looks like it should be coming from the Onion or whatever. But here's what it says. Can Republicans relearn how to accept political outcomes they don't like? What the actual F? Like, what? Okay. It says, when have Republicans in the recent years, like, have they not been accepting of certain results? Of course, there are some kind of few and far Republicans that said that like Democrats cheated in 2012 or whatever when Obama was reelected, but it's like very few. But here's the thing, though: Democrats, on the other hand, when Trump was, they still have not yet accepted that they lost in 2016. They still want to find every excuse in the book to say that the election was stolen from Hillary Clinton or whatever. And of course, their biggest thing for that was the whole Russia collusion thing that Trump was colluding with the Russians to influence the election, whatever. But it turns out to be a bunch of garbage. And so yeah, so obviously Trump was fair and square, elected in 2016, and the Democrats have not accepted it. It's been 3 years, almost 4 years at this point. So I mean, this is gaslighting at its finest. So let's see what it says. Many people were surprised when Democrat Andy Beshear beat incumbent Republican Governor Matt Bevin in Kentucky's gubernatorial race election this week by 5,000 votes. But the fact that Bevin isn't ready to concede hasn't shocked anyone. Okay, and by the way, I will get to the Kentucky election as well a little later at the end of the episode. So to get kind of more detail, my thoughts on it and all that. So, but the piece continues. And that decision raises questions we ought to prepare for, and the eventuality that President Trump loses in 2020. Citing irregularities, sorry, I can't talk, but offering nothing in the way of evidence, Bevin has asked for a recanvass in which vote totals from around the state are retabulated, which could be a prelude to a recount and ultimately to a contest. What the actual F? Like, you're citing irregularities, like basically citing, like, what he's mean by that is like basically Bevin is citing some problems with the voting results and all that, but of course does not provide evidence. Whatever. Okay. Again, this is gaslighting at its finest. For 3 years, for 2 years, 2.5 years, Democrats have been claiming without evidence that Trump stole the 2016 election with Russia's help. Without evidence. And as we saw, there was no evidence whatsoever. You can go back and read the Mueller report for yourselves. There was nothing there. So, this kind of gaslighting just drives everyone up a wall. And you wonder why people don't trust the media. So, anyways, it continues. The most remarkable statement, however, came from the president of the Kentucky Senate, who noted that according to the state law, the election could end up being decided by the state legislature, where Republicans have firm control of both houses, which means that technically they could just give the election to Bevin if they wanted. He also pointed out that the outcome could be called into doubt by the fact that there was a libertarian candidate in the race, in that he had not been on the ballot. Many of his votes would not have gone to Bevin. So, I mean, and I'm not being honest, from the looks of it, from Bevin's, it doesn't seem that Bevin doesn't have a lot of evidence that this election was rigged or whatever. I mean, it was very close. Not gonna lie, it was very, very close. It was like by 5,000 votes gap. But again, I just don't see a whole lot of evidence that the election there was stolen by the Democrats, or whatever. But still, that doesn't mean that the hypocrisy of this piece from Democrats is just astonishing. Again, for 2 years, they've been claiming that President Trump was illegitimately elected without evidence. But, so here, it continues right here. To be clear, Bevin is perfectly within his rights to hold off a concession. Eventually, he'll have to either prove that something went seriously wrong or give up. And there are certainly cases where Democrats have protested that electoral outcomes were unfair. You might recall last year how Stacey Abrams ended her campaign for governor of Georgia, but pointedly refused to call it a concession because she said it would grant the election in which her opponent engaged in various forms of voter suppression in a legitimacy it did not deserve. That case, in which a candidate said that the election was fundamentally problematic, is still accepted. It still accepted the result and moved to prepare for future elections. Show us one possible scenario that could play out in 2020, but there are other much darker ones. Okay, so that's another thing too. Stacey Abrams is still claims that she actually won the governorship here in Georgia, which is obviously not true. She hasn't provided no evidence of any voter suppression or whatever. And this again just goes to the absolute hypocrisy. The absolute hypocrisy of the Democrats. And just goes just how garbage the media is. So, and a further evidence of how garbage the media is, I'm just ripping the media the whole time here, but anyways, as you probably all saw, there was this big bombshell from ABC over Jeffrey Epstein. Now, for those of you who recall, Jeffrey Epstein was he basically for years owned a private island. Excuse me. And then he basically brought children to be sexually assaulted and all that. So it was basically a pedophile, pretty much. And the garbage, pretty much. And to be blunt here, he's a garbage human being. Like, he did very, very horrible stuff, and he deserved to be in prison for the rest of his life. And I actually think it could have gone further than that, but anyways, he was said to be go on trial and to testify and like to be a citizen and all that, but the problem is what happened was he was beaten up in his jail cell and all that, and what they found was that he might have done that to himself. Like, he basically beat himself up like Jim Carrey and Liar Liar, whatever. So what they did is they put him on suicide watch to basically keep guard on him, make sure he doesn't do anything to himself. But then, coincidentally, he did commit suicide, whatever. Now, okay, so the official ruling right now, as of right now, it is he did commit suicide, because just the kind of autopsy they did around the kind of the neck area, it is fairly common with suicide, but the circumstances around it is just very suspicious. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. Like, really, I don't buy that the Clintons are this deep, dark force that kill off everybody that they don't like, whatever. I mean, they're corrupt, no doubt, but I'm not seeing like they're exactly involved in this whole thing. Maybe they are, or just some. But either way, the circumstances around Epstein's death was suspicious. But here's one other thing about this: that Epstein was really connected with Bill Clinton for a while, and like they went on like several trips together. Clinton did go to the island where Epstein held young girls and all that, so that's another weird thing. Of course, we like to point out that says that, Trump knew Epstein. Yes, they met like once, but like literally once, and that's not even close to the level that Bill Clinton, the relationship that Bill Clinton and Epstein had. There's no connection whatsoever, and obviously that did not get any play whatsoever. There's nothing there. But anyways, so like we learned, we learned that Clinton was connected to Epstein and all that. But here's the thing: we just recently found out about that, and that whole situation took place around maybe May. I can't exactly remember when, probably May, June, or whatever. But here's the big thing: in a bombshell story that happened earlier this week, ABC News. Here's a piece from the Daily Wire. Bombshell: ABC News killed Epstein Clinton story, says anchor in hot mic video. A leaked video from inside ABC News, exclusively retained by James O'Keefe's Project Veritas, shows anchor Amy Robach talking for several minutes on hot mic, claiming that the network had a bombshell story on convicted child sex predator Jeffrey Epstein several years ago, but that the network killed the story. So they had the story for several years that Epstein was a sex predator. And they hid it for some reason. For some reason, they hid it. Why? Well, let's see why they did. And the leaked... Make sure I didn't skip anything. Yeah, I did. In the leaked footage, Robach was reportedly talking on said to her producer, who had not seen in the video, and about how she had the story on Epstein for 3 years, but was not able to run it at ABC News, Robach stated. I've had the story for 3 years, and I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air. We would not put it on the air. First of all, I was told who's Jeffrey Epstein. No one knows who that is. This is a stupid story. Well, I mean, if you have a story where you have, a prominent, like, kind of rich guy like this, who's holding child sex slaves on a private island, why would that not be published to the news? Like, that seemed like a pretty big story to kind of brush on the rug. And by the way, this is the same network who ran based those allegations against Brett Kavanaugh a year ago. And by the way, and there was no evidence for that whatsoever, but they still ran headline to headline, smearing him, calling him a gang rapist, whatever. But anyways, it continues. Then the palace found out that we had her whole allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways. We were so afraid we wouldn't be able to interview Kate and Will. That also squashed the story. And then Alan Dershowitz, who was also implicated in it because of the planes. She told me everything. She had pictures. She had everything. She was in hiding for 12 years. We convinced her to come out. We convinced her to talk to us. It was unbelievable we had Clinton. It was unbelievable we had what we had. Clinton. We had everything. If this is added. I tried for 3 years to get it on to no avail. And now it is all coming out. And it's like these new relevant revelations. And I freaking had all of it. I'm so pissed right now. Like every day. I get more and more pissed because I'm just like, oh my god, what we had was unreal. Other women backing it up. Brad Edwards, the attorney 3 years ago, saying like, there will come a day where we will realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile in this country has ever known. I had it all 3 years ago. It's not perfectly clear what exactly Robach meant when she said that she had Clinton, but it certainly is in reference to former President Bill Clinton's connections to Epstein, which have long been documented. So basically, what happened was this woman news, like she named So basically, Robach has been the supporter of Epstein News. She had the story about Jeffrey Epstein. She was ready to put it out in the air, but ABC News said, no, we can't allow that. Why? Because of several people. Alan Dershowitz, the royal family in England, and from those of it, Clinton as well. They didn't want to put these people in bad light, so they hid the story. Like, what the actual F? Like, what logic, like, comes to your head that say, oh, we gotta protect the people, these people, because we like them, so we had to cover up a pedophile who's holding child sex slaves on a private island. like want the actual evidence, props to a robot to trying to get this story out for 3 years, but so garbage. But and here's where it just gets more ridiculous. So apparently when the story came out, it was someone at ABC who leaked this. It was possibly Robotica, maybe, but I don't think it was. It was like a whistleblower at ABC basically came out with this story, and here's where things get even more bad. CBS then called ABC to fire this whistleblower for exposing the story. Like, what in the world? So, I mean, for the past few weeks, the media has all been about, oh, we must protect the whistleblower and the whole Trump-Ukraine thing. We got to protect them whatsoever, and by any means necessary. But then when a whistleblower comes and exposes them, I was like, oh, we got to fire them and get rid of them. But no, we can't be seen in a bad light. But this right here, this kind of crap, right? This kind of bad journalism, fake news nonsense is exactly why you got Trump. Because for years, the media has been operating like this, smearing conservatives at these, smearing conservatives and without evidence as racist, bigots, and homophobes, and all the while covering up themselves from all these sorts of scandals that came in. And they want to sit there and blow up every little tiny thing that comes in from the Republican side. Like I mentioned earlier, there was the whole Brett Kavanaugh thing last year, and ABC News was basically smearing Kavanaugh. And if you recall earlier this year, the whole Covington Catholic situation where these kids were waiting to get on a bus from Covington Catholic High School to go back. They were in Washington D.C. with a March for Life, and they were getting ready to go back to Kentucky. But then a group called the Black Israelites came in, started harassing them, spouting like racial epithets at them, and then a group of Native American protesters came in and started harassing the kids as well. And that one guy named Nathan Phillips came in and started banging the drums in the face of one of the students named Nick Salmon. And then, so it was in very, obviously, you can tell, you can go back and watch the video. The kids did nothing wrong in this scenario. Of course, the media took the story. Nathan Phillips actually went on the media news and basically lied about everything that happened, and basically smeared the kids, called them racist, KKK style, segregationist, whatever. So, and ABC News, of course, was one of the news outlets smearing them too. So I mean, this is like, and it really just bothers me too so much because I mean, I rely on like kind of these mainstream sites right here to get some kind of news or whatsoever, because I mean, if you don't have outside the mainstream, a lot of it is pretty biased, right? There's right-wing bias and left-wing bias, and you used to be able to go to the mainstream media like Fox News, CNN, whatever, to get some kind of facts, or whatever. But you can't anymore. And it's hard because it's just how they've been running their news and all that. Just, you can't trust them anymore. And it really bothers me. That's why, like, now when I get the news and try to get some facts in the situation, I go to like a purely right-wing source, and then a purely left-wing source. So then I can get, that way I can get, if whatever is in common is the fact of the situation, and the rest of it is their opinions. But as like the years go on, the media has just been constantly ruining their reputation on and on and on. And this is kind of crap that's going to cause them. They're so worried. They're so like they think that 2020 is going to be easy for them. That especially if Warren is nominated, she's going to easily beat Trump or whatever. I mean, no, because first off, that Warren is a radical, and I'll actually get to the whole thing in a little bit, but Warren is a radical, and there's no way that she is going to lose. She's going to win against President Trump. There's just no way whatsoever. And the media doesn't help themselves, and you would think the media would realize this, because they had every opportunity to probably Biden. Biden was really the only candidate out of them that could beat President Trump in the general election. So, but the media and the Democrats could have all rallied around him to get him to be the nominee. Now, a lot of change is still kind of early on, although the primaries are approaching fairly soon. But as of right now, Warren is now in the lead. Like, Biden has dropped quite a lot. And it just goes to the stupidity of the media and Democrats. Like, why in the world would you nominate someone who has the least likely chance to beat Trump? Like, it's just so stupid. But anyways, let's get speaking of kind of elections and all, let's get to this past Tuesday. There was actually an election going on. Now, disclaimer here, like, I didn't know there was actually these big elections going on until like Tuesday night, because like around my area there was like nothing whatsoever. I don't think there's really much in Georgia. I mean, it's all pretty much local races, and I don't think even in my county I live in, there was nothing to vote for. So it's kind of like, But so like unlike last year, I mean, there's also I guess it's kind of the calm before the storm right here, because there's nothing here, but next year is going to be the massive crap storm election. So, but anyways, there was some kind of major type of elections going on. Mostly, the one that got the most headline was in Kentucky, and as you remembered the other day, I just remember what I said earlier about the Kentucky governorship. It was for a while. A Republican governor was Matt Bevin, who was the incumbent there for years, and then now he was beat by Andy Beshear, who was a Democrat. So yeah, I mean, and I'll get to the problems why a Democrat beating a Republican in a red state is a major problem for Republicans. But here's one thing I do want to point out. Like, the left has been taking this as, this is proof positive that conservatives are going down the hole, that there's going to be a massive blue wave in 2020 or whatever. But I do want to point out something about Andy Beshear here that they don't seem to get, that they fail to seem to get. And this year's thing, you remember back in 2018, Democrats did fairly well, and there was a reason for that. All their candidates that won in these places, like won the House races, or most of them at least, I wouldn't say all, but most of them that kind of beat Republicans in like competitive areas, they were moderates. And Andy Beshear here is a moderate Democrat. So what this means is that Democrats can beat Republicans if they push for the moderate candidates. So and that they decide to go for more radical candidates, they don't have a shot at all. And you saw that with Andrew Gillum. While it was Andrew Gillum in Florida, while it was pretty close, Andrew Gillum ran a radical campaign and he lost. Beto O'Rourke ran a radical campaign, although it was very close in Texas. But that was kind of a unique situation because Ted Cruz was a kind of uniquely damaged candidate in that situation, but still, he still lost, and that goes because Beto did run a radical campaign. So, and here's obviously the moral of the story is, in order for Democrats to win, they need to run moderate candidates. But the thing is, Democrats don't seem to be all that interested in running these moderate candidates. They seem to be interested in running. They just don't want to pay attention to that to say, oh, we see this, we win. We won in Kentucky. That means we can run the most radical candidate, and people won't care because they want Republicans gone. Now, again, Andy Bashar was a moderate, and Joe Biden, I wouldn't say a complete moderate, but he was moderate in the terms against the other Democrats on that stage. Like, he was the most favorable, and he has more blue collar appeal, and so that's why he would have most likely beat Trump in 2020. But Democrats don't get that message, and they decide to run. They want to have Elizabeth Warren as the front runner. Okay, seriously, like you had every shot to learn from 2016. Because the thing is, 2016, Hillary Clinton was the worst candidate in American history. And that's why she lost. And to combat that, to try to take back the White House, Democrats decide they want to try to run as front runner an even worse candidate than Hillary Clinton. So, like, this is why I just don't see Trump losing in 2020. And that's just talking about the White House. The Senate and the House, on the other hand, that is the bigger problem. Because those are more individual type elections and whatnot. And the problem is, unlike the presidency, you've got those, most of the people there kind of, they're the virtuous signal or whatever. And more people kind of pay attention to the presidential election, whatever. But the problem, there will be Senate races and House races, and I'm more worried about the Senate, honestly, because a lot of the seats will be open are Republican seats, and it seems like right now a lot of the Senate seats, Democrats there running against them are more moderate candidates, which will be a problem for them. I sincerely hope that it doesn't. I sincerely hope that conservatives really need to get out in 2020, like they have, because I mean, I do want like, put the House, Senate, and White House to be controlled by Republicans, but I'm mostly, if I have to lose one, the Democrats, I want the House to lose the Democrats, because the Senate and the White House are kind of the one area that Republicans need to hold on to, because that's the last branch of defense against Democrats. Because Democrats, like right now, Democrats just have a House, they can try to pass legislation, crap legislation all they want, but it won't get past the Senate. And they can try to impeach President Trump, but it won't get past the Senate. But if Republicans lose the Senate and the House in 2020, that would be a major problem for President Trump. Not only in terms of impeachment, although I am curious if whether or not they will try to pursue impeachment after 2020. We'll see. But another thing is the judges. This is what I'm more concerned about right here, because, for example, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, is on the verge. I think on the verge of stepping down pretty soon, retiring and all that. And and the problem is if Republicans, if she decides to do that, like after the election when, Republicans lost the Senate and all that, that's going to be a major problem because, Ruth Bader Ginsburg stepped down and Trump can nominate Amy Coney Barrett. But the problem is, if the Democrats have the Senate, they won't vote to have Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court. So they'll hold up that seat until a Democrat wins the White House, or until 2022. So I mean, my biggest thing is that Republicans need to be better at their messaging. Like, go ahead, like, point out the bad policies and just how awful the Democrat Party is, but they need to get better at their messaging, because there's only so much that Trump can do himself, and he is not, of course, he's not perfect at it as well. Like, he's had some problems in 2020 himself. But for the Senate, Republicans and Republican House members, they need to be better at messaging if they want to hold these seats. So we'll see. I mean, I think as of right now, if I had to put money on it, although I really won't put money on it, I'll say Trump wins re-election. I think Republicans will keep the Senate, but I don't think we keep the House. I don't think we'll keep the House. I don't think Democrats will lose the House. But we shall see. I mean, we got almost a year until the general election. Less than a year, actually. So a lot of things can change until then. Alrighty, so let's get into some scripture right here. So last week we were in John chapter 4, and we did verses 1 through 42, I believe, which was longer than I anticipated, but I mean, it was a good section, and like 1 through 42 was all one story or whatnot. But now we're gonna finish up chapter 4. And it's verses 43 to 54. And it's obviously a little shorter than the previous section. But anyways, y'all can again follow along if you want, and I'll be in the New Living Translation. Alright, so At the end of the 2 days, Jesus went on to Galilee. He himself said that a prophet is not honored in his own hometown. Yet the Galileans welcomed him, for they had been in Jerusalem at the Passover celebration and had seen everything he did there. After he traveled to Galilee, he came to Cana, where he had turned the water into wine. There was a government official nearby, Capernaum, whose son was very sick. When he had heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, he went and begged Jesus to come to Capernaum to heal his son, who was about to die. Then Jesus asked, Will you never believe me unless you see the miraculous signs and wonders? The official pleaded, Lord, please come now before my little boy dies. Then Jesus told him, Go back home, your son will live. And the man believed that what Jesus had said and started home. While the man was on his way, some of his servants had met him with the news that his son was alive and well. He asked them when the boy had begun to get better. They replied, yesterday afternoon at 1 o'clock, his fever suddenly disappeared. Then the father realized that was the very time Jesus had told him, Your son will live. and he and his entire household believed in Jesus. This was the second miraculous sign Jesus had did in Galilee after coming from Judea. So also, this is a very cool story right here, and it shows you. This was obviously a government official who I think was probably a Roman official, whatever, and I don't think he was a Jew at the time. He could have been, but anyways, like this just tells you like kind of the message of this whole area. Like obviously a miracle happened, whatever, but a big message that happens in these miracles that if you have enough faith, really, is that's why these miracles happen. Is because of the faith of these people that he heals. Like the fact that this guy who didn't really know Jesus personally, but he had heard of him, that he had enough faith to know that Jesus could heal his son, and that's kind of something we need to kind of live out. Like just have that faith and trust in God that He will, no matter the circumstance, that He will always bring something good out of every situation, or whatever. So yeah, it was this is a shorter passage, and this one has so. Yeah, so next week will be in John chapter 5. Alrighty, so let's get into some good stuff and bad stuff. So some good stuff. This was pretty cool. So Ben Shapiro held a kind of YAF speech. If y'all don't know what YAF is organization called Young America's Foundation, and it's a very cool organization. It's basically organized group of young conservatives. I'm going out to college campuses recruiting these young college students, conservative college students and whatever. So, and they do a lot of good stuff. So last night, Bishop Shapiro went to Stanford for one of these speeches, and during the speech, towards the end of it, before he went to his usual Q&A type thing, he basically openly demolished the alt-right. And if y'all don't know what the alt-right is, the alt-right is a garbage and racist group of people who's on the far fringes of the right. I really don't consider them beyond the conservative right at all. They have no place in the area. But they're associated with kind of white identity politics and kind of white supremacy or whatever. So, and Ben Shapiro back in 2016 was the #1 target of these folks. He got all sorts of death threats from them and all that. And the fact, and one of the biggest reasons why he got all these death threats because he's a Jew, and the alt-right does not like the Jews for some reason. But of course, what's cool about it, he's, despite all these threats, he's still willing to openly call them out and bash them publicly, and they so richly deserve it. Anyways, so here's kind of a clip from it. I don't know, I won't be able to get on the screen, but you can hear the audio of it, and I'll have the link to it down below. So you're watching, I'll have the link to the entire speech down below as well. But here's the video.
Tonight I'm going to talk about the dangerous game that's being played by two particular nasty groups who feed off one another. I'm speaking about the radical left and the alt-right. I have one question. Are you protesting the part where I'm condemning the Nazis? You hear what I'm doing right now. Do you have ears? I'm literally condemning Nazis, and you're telling me to leave. Do you hear yourselves? I discuss the radical left on campus all the time. That's because campuses are dominated by the censorious and nasty radical left. On the other hand, I actually did question whether I wanted to talk about the alt-right tonight. One reason is because what the alt-right wants more than anything else in the world is attention. Some of them call themselves the New Right and swear they despise the founders of the alt-right. Some call themselves America First, trying to hijack President Trump's slogan to give themselves the patina of credibility. More on that in a second. Some name their movements after mammals, some after amphibians. It gets confusing. It's meant to be. You see, keeping people confused is actually one of their chief tactics because it gives them room to ridicule anybody who doesn't understand all of their esoteric labels and jokes and beliefs. And what you'll see the alt-right do is adopt the beliefs of some of these other movements in order to find cover for their actual belief system, which really is quite vile. In fact, it seems like some members of the alt-right, they have a pretty large problem with Jews generally. They'll tweet things like, quote, so-called Jewish values tend to favor liberal and internationalist positions like abortion, foreign intervention, multiculturalism, homosexuality, and mass immigration. Some of you will say that you're hurt in your daily existence by Jews. You suggested that a religious Catholic who writes for my website, a guy named Matt Walsh, is a, quote, Shabbos Goy race traitor who's throwing his own people under the bus and hates white people. In fact, Walsh is, according to you, an F word, that would be for gay people, P word, as in female genitalia, race traitor who works for the Jews. What prompted that outburst, by the way, on the part of this alt-right lead influencer? The fact that my friend, Matt Walsh, said that the El Paso racist shooter should be publicly executed in brutal fashion. One particular lead influencer, when asked if having sex with a dog is the same thing as having sex with a black man, said, quote, they would both be degenerate. Really, really classy people. So, when you believe all these garbage things, and you've said all these garbage things, and you are in fact a garbage human being, when your views are obviously white supremacist garbage, what do? You take 4 steps in order to legitimize yourself. Step number 1, the Trump gambit. First, you declare your allegiance to President Trump, and declare that you're not really alt-right, even though you obviously are. You show up to lectures wearing a MAGA hat in order to get the media to cover it, and in order to demonstrate that you are truly a representative of the 63 million Trump voters. You call yourself America First, hijacking Trump's slogan. What you actually mean is white Americans first. The media eat it up because the media love nothing better than, of course, lumping Trump in with particularly this group. Okay, step 2, then you declare yourself the true conservatives, the true heirs to conservatism. And then we have step 3, which is to troll, right? You just show up at places like this and you say dumb things, then you tell your friends how cool you are. And you tell edgy jokes about the Holocaust and cookies because, I mean, what could be funnier than that, obviously? I mean, that's just good stuff. And then finally, and this is the big one, you count on the left to help you out. Okay, the left will literally call anybody on the right alt-right, even if we say vocally and in no uncertain terms that the alt-right is pure unbridled vile garbage. They'll issue a flyer that literally depicts me as a cockroach on a bottle of bug spray with the label Ben Be Gone. I do love that one, I will say. That was pretty great. The media will suggest that President Trump is in league with the alt-right. Even at this late date, they'll neglect the fact that Trump has repeatedly condemned white supremacism, that he has purged his administration of people who were remotely friendly with the alt-right. But the left won't have the conversation. The alt-right really doesn't want to either. They prefer memeing and trolling and all the rest. So, here I am, stuck in the middle with you. Anyone on the right or left who wants to have an actual conversation about tough issues, that isn't the bumper sticker, but is also not willing to pretend that ugly bigotry is decency, or that identity politics reflects truth, or that trollish memeing is a substitute for an actual worldview. Let's have the conversation. Thanks so much. Happy to take your questions.
So crap, bam right there. That's what's cool about him. He's so articulate about his views, but he's not afraid to speak about them. And also what he said there is very true. That the left wants to label anyone on the right as alt-right, despite them, most conservatives, condemning the alt-right as not being part of this movement. And what's the weirdest thing about this whole thing is that the left still smears Ben as an alt-right white supremacist. Last I checked, white supremacists are not too kind to Jews. I recall way back in the 1940s, there's this guy named Adolf Hitler. He didn't particularly like the Jews, and he somehow gained power in Germany and made it his campaign promise to get rid of the Jews in Europe, and that led to the Holocaust, Jews being slaughtered in the streets and being shipped to concentration camps and all that. So So yeah, I mean, so white supremacists are not too kind to the Jewish people, so to label him as a white supremacist Nazi alt-right person, it does not make sense. And here's the funny thing: he is several times called out the alt-right, many times, and they still don't get it. And also, I think the left doesn't really understand what the alt-right is, and they don't want to understand, because their main goal is to get all conservatives off the air, and they have to like falsely smear them. So be it. Alrighty, so let's get into some bad stuff of the week. So this was a weird, crazy story. So Jeff Goldblum, who's a very prominent actor in Hollywood, he's been in movies like, his more prominent movies are Jurassic Park. Obviously, he plays Dr. Ian Malcolm in there. This is one of my favorite characters in that series, because a lot of what he says in the movies like comes true. Like, remember in Jurassic Park, he said that, you know, like, holding this, like, you think you have control over the dinosaurs or whatever, like, you'll lose control eventually. And that's paraphrasing, I can't exactly quote what he said, but anyways, so there's this whole situation with an actor named Woody Allen, and Woody Allen is being accused of like, child sex abuse, which is a very bad allegation, obviously, and it does, from the onset of it, it does seem credible, but beyond that, I'm not seeing. There is a little bit. There's not a whole lot of evidence, basically. But, I mean, again, I don't know fully about the story. I just learned about Woody Allen's allegations yesterday. But here's my kind of point of where I'm going here. Basically, Jeff Goldblum was interviewed. And he was talking about actually the Jurassic World movie coming out, I think, next year. And he was asked about Woody Allen, like what he thinks of the whole situation or whatever. And he said that, Woody Allen deserves a presumption of innocence. Like, people in this country have presumption of innocence until proven guilty. And all that. So yeah. I mean, obviously, what he said there is completely true. Everybody in this country, despite who it is, deserves a presumption of innocence. That's right there in the Constitution. But for some reason, he got canceled. He was attacked by the social media mob, saying that he's okay with child sex abuse, or he likes child sex abuse or whatever. It's like all these stupid nonsense, like smears against him. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, when did defending due process rights become such a bad thing? Like I'm only 22. I'm still pretty young, so I'm still within the younger generation. I'm so confused. Like, when did my generation become so against the idea of due process? It doesn't make sense, and it just goes to show you just how garbage the whole cancel culture thing is, and just they're willing to go after anybody who doesn't believe everything they believe. So, alrighty, so I think that's all I have for today. So before we go, let's talk about Amazon. So, obviously, like I said, Amazon is a great company, but they make things so much easier when you're trying to find certain items or books or just whatever. Like this mic right here, I got it from Amazon, and it's working great. So yeah, some products I do recommend this week would be Bullies by Ben Shapiro. So like I said before, is a great book and goes hand to how the left operates and all that. Then we have Addicted to Outrage by Glenn Beck, and that's also a really great book, and just kind of goes into the outrage mob a little bit. It goes into the cancel culture and all that. It's how we're all willing to, like, we're addicted to outrage pretty much, like it says in the title, that we're willing to blow up these little teeny tiny stories for some kind of political or gain, or just kind of some kind of temporary fulfillment, whatever. So I recommend getting that book. And we also have the Pocket Constitution, which really comes in handy, and especially if you're going on college campus tours and you're amongst, like, or if you're going to college or whatever, and you're amongst very left-wing students, whatever, it's good to have that. So when people say outright unconstitutional things, you can say, look, that's not what the Constitution says, whatever. So yeah, I recommend getting that. Or you got a Trump 2020 t-shirt, leftist tears mug, and more on the kind of Christian religious side of the situation. There's the Great House of God book by Master Lucado. I recommend that book. That's a really, really good book. And then for Christian men, I recommend getting Wall of Heart by John Eldridge. That's a fantastic book. So I recommend getting that. So, and you'll be able to find all that in the link. I have some links to those products in the description below. And otherwise, like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see y'all next week. My name is Sean Clinton, and this is the God and Freedom Show.